All right, so welcome to the training for Tabik-Gizis Kinamegewin project. So the name itself is Moon Teachings, that's what it means. And so this project is funded through Heritage Canada. And the funding itself is through a stream from Heritage Canada about commemorating the legacy of residential school survivors. So the idea was for 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 us to do this, but also for us to keep away for us to keep the Youth Voices project that we have had and continue to have alive. So the project itself is run through Youth Voices, which I didn't mention at the beginning, and I apologize for that. But Youth Voices was funded by SSHRC, which is one of the larger tri-council agency funders. And we had funding for a year, and what we did was we created a social media presence and talked about our perspectives on reconciliation. And it quickly went from reconciliation to reclamation of culture, identity, and self. As as the one that applied for the funding and worked with the youth, we just let them do what they wanted to do, and we just followed them and supported them the best that we could. So that funding ran out, and which is why we applied for more funding, and this is a result of that. I think too, within the Youth Voices project, there was more focus put on truth. So how can we reconcile if people don't know the truth, or how can people reconcile with us if people don't know the truth? So which is when this funding opportunity came up, we went with it, applied for it, and the day that we heard that we received the funding was on September 30th, which was kind of, because that's Orange Shirt Day, and that's the day that we honor residential school survivors, and that's the day that I heard that we received the funding. So of course, with COVID, everything that's happening, the project has switched a bit to all online. And so as we move through the project itself, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, there may be a little bit of maneuvering or change to it, but we'll see how it goes. So anyway, that's a little bit about the background of why we applied for the funding itself. So now that we do have the funding, we have enough money through the funding to pay for a project coordinator, which is Echo's position. And then we also have money to provide honorariums for youth that participate, and also for the elders to tell their story to the youth. So that's the part that was important, is that the storytelling piece and the training, all of those things will be covered. So there'll be 4 times that you would receive an honorarium. This evening being one of them, the second one being the interview itself, also the debriefing session, and I believe the editing session. So there's 4 times that you will get an honorarium for participating. And also the elders will get an honorarium too. Again, the funding comes from the Heritage Canada, and it has to do, like I said, with commemorating the legacy. So the idea of voices and stories, I think, are important, and relationships when we're connecting and talking to one another, and that special connection between youth and elders. So the idea is that we're framing it on the 13 moons. So in our calendar, Anishinaabe calendar, there are 13 moons. So we're hoping to have each moon represented as one story of one residential school survivor or former residential school student that, lost my train of thought, that would be interviewed by a youth. So that's the key, there's that connection. So, just keeping in mind that I know there may not be 13 pairs. We called them in the grant application Moontime Teaching Duos. So it was a youth and elder. We may not have 13 Moontime Teaching Duos, and that's okay. What we can do is we can expand upon, one video and make it into 2. So that way there'll be 13 mini videos for the project itself. So why are we doing the project? And so we can ensure that our voices, the elders' voices and also the youth voices are heard, and that their voices come first, and not, not other people. I think of this also in the area of missing and murdered Indigenous women, and the work that's being done in that area. Scholars can catch on to that, and start doing their own work in that area, but I think it has to come from the survivors and the ones that are affected by it, and which are, probably unfortunately a lot of people, because there's a lot of people that are connected to that. Yeah, so the idea is that we're going to be creating 10 to 15 minute mini videos of the elders' lives, or the residential school survivors' story. And you as youth will be interviewing them. And we'll talk about a little bit more about interviewing techniques after. But that's really the key. And so what are we going to do with this after? So we have these amazing videos that talk about the lives of people that went to residential school, and not only about their experience with residential school, but their whole life story, because I think that's important also, that we don't just form our opinion or focus on one part, that we talk about them as an individual and a human being across their whole lifespan, and not just one part. So that part is going to be within the 10 to 15 minute mini video. Also, part of that is a learning guide that's going to go along with the 13 videos. And that's something that ECHO is going to be working on also, along with Carmen and myself, and anyone else that's interested in participating. So the idea is that people will be able to watch the videos, but also learn from them. So the learning guide will have, a lot of information about the history within Turtle Island. It'll go through each of the person's life stories, and it will also have discussion questions. We were going to do age appropriate, like 4 different ones, but because of the way how long it took for us to get the funding, we applied in April and we heard in September, the end of September. There wasn't a lot of time for us to, so they allowed us to change it a bit. So we're going to do one learning guide, and hopefully we can hopefully we can create some age appropriate discussion questions. So this is really for us, but also for the larger, public Canadian, whatever, Canadian, is there such thing as a Canadian? I don't know. But anyway, that's another topic that we don't have to, that I'm not going to talk about right now. But just this idea that the public, I think, needs to know, not so much, like the traumatizing portions of residential schools, but the life stories of the people, that they are real people, that they come from families, and after their residential school experience, that they may have went on to be very successful, and success being what people would what they believe success is, right? Sometimes success means getting, going to school, getting a job, and making a lot of money, whereas another person may see success as knowing their language and being able to live in the bush and survive, right? And that's really black and white thinking, but there is a lot of in between. You can kind of have characteristics of both. Yeah, so that's the key. And the videos are going to be housed, so they're going to be placed on the Laurentian University website for people to download for free and to watch for free. So the key is not for us to make money, or for me to make money off of it, but it's really for people to be able to access. So if I say we're a school teacher and I want to teach about residential schools, or I want to teach about, residential schools and the effects, I could go online and find this and be able to share it with my class. Choose 1 or 2 videos, have discussion questions, and then also have the background information on residential schools and the history within Canada. So I think that's important. Yeah, so that's really the project in a nutshell. And so we just actually received a notice today that our project has been given an extended deadline. So our actual first deadline that they gave us, which they said that they weren't going to move because this is how funding works and we can't change it, they said was March 31st. And so me, Echo, and Carmen were scrambling, and Julia and other people that were partners were scrambling, trying to figure out how we're going to do this respectfully, honor the stories, but also meet this deadline. Then they said, oh, you have until September. So we have a little bit of leeway now. So I told them, I'm hoping, so this is my thoughts. My thoughts is that we release this and we launch it on June 21st. And then that would give us all of July for me and Echo and Carmen to write up the final report. So anyway, there's that. So that's really the project in a nutshell. Are there any questions or comments? Wow, am I really that good?
No one said that, Joey.
All right, so that wasn't very humble of me to say that, eh? All right, so that's a project overview. And so next up we have Echo and Carmen are going to talk about the consent form. So before you can come onto the project, you need to know exactly what the project is. The risks to it, the benefits, all of those different pieces. And that's what we call informed consent, so that you have all the information that you need in order to make a decision. So I believe Echo is going to take that part on with Carmen.
Perfect. So I was actually just recently sent the consent forms. So I'm just going to read through it. I'm not too sure at what point, Carmen, like if you feel free to interrupt. But I'm just going to read off of the consent form just so I make sure I hit every point.
Sorry, did you want me to make you a co-host so you can share it?
Sure, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, that way people can see it.
Perfect, okay. Oh gosh, now I can't see.
We can.
Lucky guys. Okay, so this is what, oh, well, I'll start from the beginning. So after this meeting today, I'm going to reach out pending your interest and consent to participate. I'll forward this sheet as well. So it includes just contact information. So name, phone number, email, and then what's your preferred method of contact. Alongside that, we have a lot of breakdown of the to be informed and to offer consent. So like Joey-Lynn was saying, the purpose of the project is to bring forward and honor truth stories that many Indigenous people have experienced and survived through residential schools. This proposed project will share these experiences of strength through videos, which can be used to educate the current and future generations via social media and online platforms. So I'll just read through it. Okay, expectations. We'll spend one-on-one time sharing your life story with the youth, who will be asking guiding questions about your life, including the time you attended residential school. And we are going to talk a little bit more about the flexibility we have with the video recording. A lot of points have been brought up about comfortability in front of the camera. We as a team have it's been brought up to our attention, and we'll talk about it as well. So don't fear the camera. So you will also be attending a debriefing session after your interview to ensure you feel continued support. We also have national counseling or crisis intervention resources. They're all listed at the bottom as well. I should note as well that it is important that as much as you are aware and have informed consent, that the elders you're sitting with are also aware of their informed consent as well. So it's good to sit with them prior to the interview and talk to them about these things as well. So you'll work with a professional videographer and youth to edit your recording. That's a lot of the background, so like myself, will be a part of that portion. So definitely don't fear that as well. We just ask that you upload it, and then I'll work with you on that part. You'll be invited to attend and participate in online launch of the videos accompanying a learning guide that will be released. As Joey-Lynn said, the anticipated date is June 21st. So benefits, connection to Indigenous youth who will work with the project duration. Sharing your story can help educate people in Canada on the history of residential schools. And just to elaborate briefly, I know that when I was in elementary school or high school, I did not learn anything about my people's history. Luckily, I had parents who helped source that education, but this is definitely discussions that need to be had. And then a big part of why we have this training today is looking at the risks. So there's psychological, emotional risks. So it could be feeling uncomfortable, embarrassed, anxious, or upset when sharing, editing, launching your stories online through the recordings, when you sit with the storytellers. For confidentiality, so due to the nature of the project, confidentiality cannot be guaranteed. Your identity will be shown within your video along with the name. You can choose not to show your face, and we'll focus on non-identifying features. If you're not comfortable with using your name, you may choose, I can't even read that. Yeah, I'm gonna bypass that one. Sorry guys, I don't even have my glasses. This is your choice, and I have to zoom in. I'm sorry.
Sorry. You're so funny. A pseudonym or alias. So a fake name.
That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Okay, yeah. Alias. Okay. All data related to this study will be kept for 7 years in a secure location. The video will be available on Laurentian University's website. A paper will be written about the creation process of this project within the academic community. Through a peer-reviewed article and presentation at academic conferences, you'll be informed of the article and presentations via your provided contact information, and asked if you'd like to participate as a co-author or co-presenter. Ooh, fancy. You have the option of contacting a member of Laurentian University's research team who is not directly attached to the research if any ethical issues or complaints about the research itself arises. And there is contact for research officer, Stephanie Harris, and down below, it has the 1-800 number along with the email. And much like many research opportunities, you can withdraw at any point without penalty or consequences. We just ask that it's through a written letter sharing your withdrawal and addressed to Joey-Lynn. She's just the research lead. If you read this consent form and have the opportunity to ask questions which were answered to my satisfaction, I've received a copy of this consent form, which I will forward to everybody. And then just to initial what you are consenting to specifically. So you're consenting to just audio recording, consenting to video that would reveal your identity, consent to be recorded on video to not reveal your identity, consent to name. I would like to receive a personal edited video for my own purposes. And then listed, we have the National Counseling Crisis Intervention Resources. So these are for both your keeping and also for the storyteller that you sit with. If you feel that, or if you ask them if they want this information, it's always good for them to have on hand as well. Oh, that was for the adults, the elders or storytellers. Oh yeah, student or family member. Whew. And this one's for the youth. I didn't realize there were different ones. Okay.
That's okay.
No worries. Okay. So same breakdown of the research itself, expectations. Similar, you'll spend one-on-one with a former residential school student, family member, or former residential school student. We also brought in, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joey-Lynn, individuals who have a history with Indian Day School and or intergenerational experiences of residential school. So as an example, if you have like a parent or an auntie or uncle who their parents went to residential schools and experienced you know, the trauma that involves an intergenerational events that transpire. You can also sit with them and they can share their story about what it was like to be raised in that type of environment, which I'm correct, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Where was I? So we'll attend a debriefing session. So both for the storyteller and yourself, there'll be 2 different debriefing sessions, just for Joey-Lynn, I, and Carmen to sit and to talk about and make sure that everyone is okay. That's one of the biggest, not concerns, but it's definitely something that we have in our head and that we want to make sure everyone feels safe and supported. We're anticipating it happen after your interview, shortly after, just because we don't want to let it sit for too long. You will work with a professional videographer to edit your recording. And as of today, we have confirmed a video editor who will help facilitate that. And like I said, I will be, myself and Carmen will be there to support anyone who has any questions about the technology side of it, because I know it can be kind of fearful. And you'll be invited to attend and participate the online launch. Benefits, so connection to a former residential school student or family member of a former residential school student who will work with you for the project duration. Being part of a team who can help educate people in Canada on the history of residential schools. You will learn the true story of residential schools from a person who attended, which can help understand the impacts of intergenerational trauma and healing. The risks, much like previously, psychological, emotional risks, you know, feeling comfortable, embarrassed, anxious, upset, which is why we make such an important piece as to a debriefing session and talking about that. Much like above, you know, confidentiality, which just means, you know, maintaining kind of understanding what you can share and what you can't share. Unfortunately, with this type of project, there are ways around identifying yourself that we will talk about when we are looking at recording. But it is also going to be a little bit more challenging if that's that case. But don't be fearful of that. We'll definitely work with you as much as we can to make sure that you're comfortable and supported. All data related will be, the study will be kept for 7 years in a secure location. The videos will be available on Laurentian's website. A paper will be written about the creation process of this project within the academic community through a peer-reviewed article and presentations at academic conferences. You'll be informed of the article and presentations via your provided contact information. Asked if you would like to participate as a co-author, co-presenter, much like above. You have the option of contacting a member of the research ethics team if you have any issues or complaints. And you can withdraw at any time, much like the storyteller. And then we just ask that you confirm how you would like to participate in the recording. And then we have a different list of outreach resources for counseling or crisis intervention. Both are scaled to the individual who's writing it. So if we go back up. Oops. So we actually have listed for those sharing their stories about residential schools, the actual residential health support program. Oh my gosh. And then the 24-hour residential school crisis line. So like obviously we have Native Women's Association Canada for elder support as well. But just make note that they are different consent forms for yourself and for the storyteller. And I'm gonna stop talking for a little bit. Let me know if you have any questions. Like I said before, I will forward this to everybody after our meeting tonight, and just forward it with your consent if you would like to participate.
Great, Miigwech for that echo. Did you have anything you'd like to add, Carmen?
No, that was brilliant. That was very well done.
Awesome. So does anyone have any questions about the consent form?
I just have a comment. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The residential school resolution program is an amazing program, and it offers free therapeutic sessions for victims of residential school or intergenerational victims of residential school. It's something I participate in now, and I would strongly recommend it to, unfortunately, right now it's only status Indians who qualify, but if you are status, I would strongly recommend looking into it. They give you a list of their therapists all throughout the cities. Right now I'm accessing a therapist through Toronto. So I just, just want to preach on that program. And if you guys are struggling, just to really look into that one.
Great, miigwech Kali. If you can just send me that information and we can add it to the consent form for sure, and just make note that it's for status. Great, awesome. Yeah, so it is 6:56. We've been sitting here for an hour. Actually, before that, does anyone have any other questions or comments before we continue?
I'm going to interrupt again. Sorry. So how do you guys pair the youth with the elders?
So within the original grant application, we were hoping that the youth would have a family member or someone close to them that they would be able to interview. So more than a few already do have people that they are going to interview. They have family members, people close to them. And for the ones that don't, we were going to try and pair you up with somebody. But then also thinking about having some type of maybe sharing circle or something where you would talk about your experiences living with someone that went to residential school, or experiences or stories that you've heard. So we haven't actually figured that part out yet, but we want to make sure that everyone is involved and everyone feels like they're contributing. So that's where we're at right now.
Perfect. So my dad's a residential day school survivor. He comes from Shisasabi First Nations, which is in northern Quebec, right at the tip of the Hudson Bay and at the north of the James Bay. So is he somebody that I can ask? And then kind of on the devil's advocate side, I'm just worried about what trauma that would also open up for me.
Yeah, and that's a legitimate concern, which is why, like when we went through ethics, they were kind of concerned about family members and, people reliving their trauma, which is why we offered the debriefing session after and the resources, and that people go in knowing, that they have that consent and that they know that it may be triggering, it may, it may, bring up feelings, you may feel uncomfortable, all of those different things. So that's why we want to make sure that people know first before they say yes and then not know what they're getting into.
Perfect. Thank you, Joey.
No problem, Kali. Echo, did you have something to add?
No, I'm just trying to see.
Oh. You look very intellectual right now. You're like, yes.
Yes, that point exactly.
Awesome. All right. So I think what we'll do is we'll take a 10-minute break. People can walk around, do what you need to do, and then we'll come back at 7:10 and then we'll start again. All right, so we're going to continue on with our training. So the next part that we have has to do with, being sensitive. And actually, I was in a workshop today with Cindy Baskin, Dr. Cindy Baskin, and she talked about this idea of being sensitive. Maybe we need to be not culturally sensitive, but culturally safe. And that's something that I've thought about before, but never really talked too much about, but I think we can change it. Carmen, that has worked really hard on this guide, but looking at a guide to being safe with survivor stories, and ensuring that their words and stories are being honored to survivor stories, and then I'll get to the guiding questions. So Carmen, I'll talk a little bit, and then are you comfortable with bringing up the manual if I make you co-host, and then you can share your screen? Okay. All right. Yeah, so again, thinking about residential schools and, Indian day schools, I think we as, some people may have attended these Indian day schools that aren't, they're not in their 50s, 60s, 70s, right? So some of them they're still fairly young. I think the last one closed in 1996, and that was in Saskatchewan area. So we have to be mindful that these stories can still be very fresh for some people, and that it hasn't been that long since they've been in school, or that they have heard about these stories, or that some people are very much still coping with what has happened to them. So that's important to note. And I was actually on TikTok. I love TikTok, and that's funny for a mid-40s woman, but maybe not so much now that we're in quarantine. And I came across this one story about this woman her mom was sharing. So she was asking her mom about residential school and her time there. And you could see on that woman, on her mom's face, how much trauma she still carries from that. And I forwarded to Echo, and I said, Echo, we need to really be mindful of the stories, of how we share what stories or what questions we ask. We don't want to be too intrusive, but we want them to be able to share what they want to share without it being so traumatic for them that they can't recover from it, right? So there's that balance of being able to share the realities of what occurred, but also be mindful and respectful of the person and their health and their well-being. So we want to be able to help find, we'll talk about that too, this balance of the two, which I think is important. And also, if we're looking at it from, the youth perspective, and hearing these stories and the impact that can have on you, that's also something that we need to be mindful of too. So being able to have that good support system around you for you to be able to debrief even after our session. So the way that Echo is going to set up the meetings or the debriefing sessions is that you're going to have your interview, your storytelling with your family member or somebody, but then right after, we want to be able to talk to you right after to make sure that you're okay, how you're feeling, what you're going through, and to be able to ensure that you have that support system after. Because sometimes things won't come up right away. You'll think that you're okay, everything's fine, and then you'll be laying in bed, or just thinking, and then something will not strike like a lightning strike, but I mean something might strike your thoughts, right? To think back to that, where your mind is a little bit more not as busy, like during the day. At nighttime, I know that I like to, lay in bed and think before I fall asleep. So that might be a time, where you as a person that has heard the story, you might start to really process it at that time. So making sure that you have supports at that time also, and not just within the hour after your interview with us. So I think that's also important. Yeah, I think that's part of it. And just knowing that these stories are real, and that as we go through them, and we'll talk about interviewing techniques too, a little bit about, asking questions that don't require a yes or no answer. Most people understand open-ended questions, right? So do you like sand? Do you like peanut butter? Well, yes, or you can say, well, what do you like to eat? What do you like on your sandwiches? You can tell I'm a little bit hungry right now. But you know, just those questions. I could say, do you like peanut butter sandwiches? You know, the answer would be yes or no. Or I could say, what kind of sandwiches do you like? Like, oh, I like, I don't know, ham. Oh, okay, well, what else do you put on there, right? And when do you make this meal, right? So it's a lot of those questions where you have open-ended answers to it. So it's not, you can't just answer it with a yes or no. There's like an explanation or story that comes with it. So Carmen, whenever you're ready. Mhm.
All right. So I did just change the title. So, wait, I'm not screen sharing, am I? Okay, wait. Share screen. There we go. There it is, okay.
Yeah.
So now we have it as Guide to Being Safe to Survivor Stories. Just, I like the SSS, that's just always nice. And then for some reason, it's not letting me, okay, there we go. I'm gonna move these, okay. So I just have this guide laid out pretty simply. So kind of a what to expect going into an interview. That some people, when they are bringing up some really painful memories, they're gonna maybe like almost relive that entire experience. And they can tense up physically, they can get angry and frightened, they could cry, they could just kind of go speechless. There's all types of ways to react. And so just being kind of like getting to like expect the unexpected, basically, like who knows how they'll be. And then before conducting the interview, you want to create a safe environment to make sure that they feel, you know, willing to share the story. So just whether it's like in a living room and making it warm and having blankets and a tea available. And I added to have like offering some medicines. So doing a smudge beforehand and afterwards as well. Having like being near a fire, or maybe it's like because of COVID, you want to do a social distance and you can be outside. Maybe that would be a safe place. So yeah, and then having kind of like water or tissues available, but not like pushing that onto someone. So just having it situated close by. And then we go into how to listen well. So obviously when you're interviewing, you want to like have an engaging presence and like make eye contact and have like an open body language. So if you can like reserve that room and just limit any distractions and interruptions. So that's pretty straightforward things. And then I have this little area. So situating self can be for the groups that aren't maybe familiar with the residential school survivor they're interviewing. So maybe we can even arrange to have like a Zoom meeting where they meet each other before doing the interview and they can talk and get to know each other before going into some really deep stuff. So yeah, and you can explain like who you are and why you are interested in this project. And then I think Joey or maybe Echo mentioned this before, but we want to look at kind of like this larger lifeline. So before they went to residential school, some memories that they had of their own community or their family and the language and the culture. And like, I guess like, you know, focusing on the good at the beginning. And then I go into, so how to ask some difficult questions, and I give like really generic questions of what to ask. So yeah, being specific with your questions. So you don't want to just start at like, so what happened? You know, like that's just too vague. And that doesn't, like you want to be specific without being traumatic, which is a hard kind of line to play. But not using victimizing language. So let's say, how do I say this? I guess like if they were physically hurt while in residential school, you wouldn't say like, you know, like you wouldn't like bring that back and title them with that, if that makes sense. So you would bring it back to like past tense, use past tense, like as a child growing up, having experienced this action, not you are this action, if that makes sense. Yeah, and then let them lead you. So like through their questions, you can build, so through their answers, you can build extra questions, and that can make for a really enriched story. Yeah, and be aware of their boundaries. And if you can kind of tell when someone is just short with their answers, it's maybe a place they don't want to open up about yet. So yeah, these are some of the questions. How were you taken to residential school? Because that would be unique to everyone. And what are your initial thoughts when you first got there? Because could have been, I don't know, I have no idea. That would be a really interesting thing. How did they treat you? What did they teach you? So it's like they're specific without being intense, I guess. And then, so that's the dark part. And then we're gonna go out from there and focusing on strengths of what helped during their time there. Maybe they did make some connections while at the school. Maybe they found like comfort in like a song that they remembered from their community. Like there's so much there. And then again, ending, so we want to just really look at resiliency. So ending on a good note, where are they now? And yeah, defining like what success means to them with their current situation. And then I just added this as well because I think it's so interesting that we have youth working with like elders. So hopes and visions for future generations, which kind of also tackles that whole intergenerational trauma of the residential schools. And yeah, so it's pretty short, pretty straightforward. And if there are any questions, feel free. I don't know how to wait. Stop sharing. Do I go back to the screen? Wait.
I think if you click on top, like if you just scroll your mouse around the top little,
The middle.
it'll kind of just pop up. Or I can just, I don't know if I can.
I should be familiar with this by now, but oh, stop share. There it is. Okay,
Okay, perfect. Great. There is a question having to do with experiencing safe places and sharing medicines during a time, I guess, such as now. So definitely it's a good question.
That's a great question. Yeah.
And are you okay if I just answer it?
Mm.
Okay. So yeah, definitely, especially with COVID and physical distancing, and especially with elders, older adults also, not wanting to expose them to possibly COVID or a cold or the flu. We don't want to do that to them. So sometimes we might not be able to be in the same room. So how do we experience those things? Sharing those things together. It may be just through something like this venue. We'd have to try through Zoom and possibly sending them a smudge kit, and asking them to set up their room, or asking someone close to them to be able to set up the room for them so that they are comfortable. So I think there are a lot of variables, but I don't think it's impossible, but I think it is something that we need to think about. So yeah, that's a good question, Caroline. But yeah, I think it can be done. We just have to figure out ways around being socially distanced to be able to do it. Sometimes we're lucky enough to have our moms and grandmas and aunties in our social bubble, and sometimes not. So we have to, I think it's going to be unique, and I think Echo, Carmen, and I are going to have to really think about that and take each Moontime teaching duo, as very unique. So I know with Julia, my daughter, her mom, my mom, her grandma, they are in each other's social bubbles, so they wouldn't have a problem with interviewing together in one room. But other people may not, so that's something we have to think about.
Are we able to do like Zoom interviews and just record it and then edit that?
Yeah, for sure. We just have to think about lighting, sound quality, stuff like that, which might be a little bit tricky, but I think it's definitely doable. But remembering too that these are going to be edited by a professional videographer, I think is going to be super helpful. So we'd have to know also what format he wants it in and stuff like that, or they want it in, I'm not sure. Yeah, so there's that part. Also thinking about, just creating that safe space and being able to be, have that empathy to know when people are not feeling comfortable, right? And if we do know the person quite well, we can kind of know already what that is. So I think that part is okay. And like Carmen said, not using that victimizing type of language, like, oh, so, you were abused when you were, you were an abused child. Well, no, we're not going to talk like that, right? It's more along the lines of, when you were a child and you attended residential school, right? What were some things that occurred or happened? And then with the guiding questions, Carmen had put a few down there, which is great, and I think that's going to help also. But I don't want to make it so formulaic or so like this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is how you're going to do it, and that's it, right? Because once we do that, what happens is that we lose the essence of what's going on when you're talking with a former residential school student and survivor. So if you can start from their youth, right? You can just say, tell me a little bit about your youth. Tell me about when you were young before you went to residential school or before you went to Indian day school. And they may tell you stories about their mom and their dad and, all of these different things. And that kind of eases, as Carmen was saying, it's going to ease them into a conversation with you. It's not going to make it seem like it's so like, all right, question 1, that's not how we have conversations in real life with our family members. So, well, maybe, I don't know. That would be quite funny though. All right, tell me, number 1, how was your day? Number 2, like we don't talk like that in normal life. So we want to make this as natural as possible. Yeah, so, and then the school experience itself, right? We want to be able to have the person that you're interviewing feel comfortable enough to share to share what they want to share and how they want to share it. Some people will just start talking and talking and talking, and that's good. That's great. You can just keep encouraging them, going, yeah, oh yeah, and like if they say, oh, and I met so and so there. Oh, cool. So trying to keep them going as they're talking, whereas other people may not know what to say or how to say it or not sure what to tell you. So that's when you're going to have to start, talking like what Carmen had wrote in that little guide, which we will give to you when we finalize it. Talking about like, okay, with the school. So when did you go to school? How were you taken from your community? No, not taken, but how did you end up in residential school, right? Some people may say, well, I went to Indian day school, so I actually went home every day. Okay, so you went, that's part of it. So, and then thinking about the school experience itself and asking them how long were they there, and other things, what did they learn, in residential schools? Some people learn, like how to sew, how to knit. Men, the boys there that probably learned how to like do the hard labor, stuff like that. So, and we know that already, that from stories that have already been told, that it's usually very menial labor jobs that they were given and learned, because for some reason that's what all they thought that they were going to be able to do. And just of course the way that the residential schools were set up, we know this now, but I think it's still important for us to be able to allow the person that you're interviewing to be able to share that. And then, asking what happened after school. You know, so after you were done school and you didn't go back into the day school or the residential school, tell me about your life. What happened then? I'm interested. You can even say, I'm interested. I want to know more. You know, and they may say, oh, well, I'm thinking about my mom, and how after, she went to grade 7 and that's as far as she went. And then she got married and had babies, right? So learning more about that. Oh, tell me more about, your marriage. Tell me more about your, the children that you had. What kind of life did you have? Where did you live? What type of house did you live in? All of those different things. You need to not act, but you need to be as curious as you can. We want you to know as much as you can about the person that you're interviewing. And then looking back at now, like Carmen had said, where they are right now. So tell me a little about where you are right now. Thinking about my mom. Okay, well, she can talk about how she's retired and she lives in subsidized housing because she doesn't want to have her own house anymore, so she gave it up, and now she's more comfortable because she doesn't have to take care of like the property taxes and all that stuff, and that she has so many grandchildren, and oh, okay, how many grandchildren do you have? I'm sure if you ask my mom, I don't even think she'd be able to count because there's so many. She's a great grandma, great great grandma, and I believe, yeah, so she's a 3-4 times now. Yeah, so she has lots of grandchildren. And then also, in order to tie it into to the project itself, thinking about looking back, saying now that you've done all this and you've survived residential school, and then you can name things like, and now you have you've raised a family, you've had a career, you still have your home, your camp in the bush that you visit every summer. What are some things that you learn that you can share with public, that you can share with someone that's watching this, right? So kind of tie it back into so you can engage the audience, and it sounds kind of bad when I say it that way, like the audience, like some type of consumer of our grief and our trauma, but it's more along the lines of our, for them to be able to understand the impact that the residential schools have had, and although that they have had a good life, that they do have some things that they want to share with the public. And if you're not too comfortable and not really knowing how to do this, let Echo know, and let Carmen know. Carmen is a 3rd-year social work student, and Echo is really community-based and very she's pretty easygoing, very easy to talk to, right? Same as Carmen. So you can also ask them for some more help, and having those guiding questions, I think, is going to help you and the people around you too. I know, thinking about, and I know I keep picking on you, Jada, but it's just because you're right there. Your mom, she's a big help and a big support. There she is. And having her to help you with the questions, and probably being in the next room to be there to help you if you need it. So that's excellent. Yeah. So I think that's a little bit about the trauma piece, and making sure that we have that safe space for people to be able to share, and for us to be able to create that safe space for us and for the people that we're interviewing. Awesome. Yeah, and Callie says that she can help also because she's also a social work student too, very close to graduating. And Jason's also a graduate of the social work program, and I believe Callie, you were mentioning Kaylee. I don't know, Kaylee, yeah, okay. Kaylee was mentioning that she's also in university for that also, and so a lot of really good people to be able to, yeah, just to that have that knowledge. All right. Any questions or comments before we continue on to the next part? All right. So next, I believe we have on our list is interview guide prep and questions. Maybe that's Echo. Yes.
Yeah, that's me. I'm going to. Can you make me a co-host so I can share my screen, please?
You want me to what? Sorry.
Never mind. I got it. I thought I had to
Oh, okay.
request it. Okay. So, along with other pieces like the consent forms, I'm going to be forwarding you some like tips and tricks reminders for when you're preparing for your interview. So I have this, and because I'm so blind, bear with me, guys, or everybody. Okay. So how to prepare for the interview. These are just like small steps to keep in mind as you're getting ready. So I start off with the night before. So I say make sure your recording device is fully charged. This is more technical portion. I am talking with the video editor about some of his preferences for like angles, lighting, and as of right now, it's pretty vague. So as I get updated, I will inform. But for the most of it, for the most of the guidance I've already received, it's your phone is fine, or if you have a tablet, a laptop, whatever you have at your disposal. If you don't have anything, reach out to me and see what we can work with. But along with making sure your device, your recording device is fully charged, you know, collecting the various pieces of equipment. So whether that's, you know, a tripod, he mentioned something to make sure it's stabilized. Because, you know, if you have it in your hand, you might shake or you might move, your arm might kind of get restless. So you know, just keeping these things in mind. We look at lighting, but even just being aware of if it is someone in your household, you know, what room has, you know, better lighting. We also talk about, you know, having things prepared like facial tissues, like Kleenexes, in case something happens, you never know, but not having it right in the person's face, like you're expecting them to be upset or emotional. We're in this portion too, actually, okay, never mind. So I put prepare medicines or a bundle, but it's really important that before you go into the interview, if you know the person, that you receive consent to bring medicines in. Not everybody feels the same way about traditional medicine, you know, whether it's allergies, asthma, or even just plain old preferences. You never know what the person's carrying. So just to be aware of that, that they might not seek traditional medicines, you know, so maybe asking like what their favorite beverage is. So if it's like a tea or a water or coffee, you know, making sure that that's around. Bring your questions on a piece of paper. Because I have a funny feeling that most people will interview with their phone, just because it's the easiest and it has pretty great quality. So it's important that you have your questions, you know, have it in mind, but if ever you blank or you get nervous or there's emotions, you know, that you have access to those guiding questions at all times. Just be aware that if you have the paper, you know, the noise that you make if you're tossing it around, just to be mindful of that noise. But again, before your interview, preparing that piece. And that would be like along with the consent form, which I will assist with as well. When at the interview, so you're setting the scene. And this is a discussion you'll have to have with your storyteller, you know, whether they want to be seen, and if they don't, that's perfectly fine. It's looking at the different angles that you can achieve that. So whether it's, you know, maybe talking to them if they're willing to share photographs, you know, of maybe when they were young, you know, like a family picture or something, or perhaps, you know, maybe just the back of their head, you know, those non-identifying angles or maybe you just record their hands, and as they talk, you hear their voice, but you just see their hands. These are discussions that you can have with them. If you do want to, you can definitely contact myself, Carmen. Look at making or having creative ways of doing that. And that goes for yourself as well. I know there is some reluctancy on showcasing yourself, and even if you have the camera in the back, and it's the back of your head, and it's directly on the storyteller, so it shows that you are having that conversation with someone. There's just many different ways that we can explore how you set the scene for the story to make it both comfortable, safe, supported. And do a test run. So because, I'm not a professional by any means, especially with videography. So, test the angles, test the audio. Every piece of device is different too. So just making sure that before you get into it, that you're recording and that everyone's comfortable. As though the worst thing that could happen is you think it's recording, and then they're going into their story, and it's like halfway through you realize they're not recording, and you're not going to make them start over. But then their story starts from a different place. So do a test run. And I put this in, I thought this was really important, making sure they're okay throughout the process, or not the process, excuse me, throughout the storytelling. So at any point, if you feel you need a break, feel free to take one. Take caution when listening to the stories. We don't want re-traumatization to take place. So if the interviewee is getting emotional, offer a smudge, glass of water. And I would hope that conversation would be had if that person is like, if I'm getting emotional, I would like to smudge, or I want to hold a tobacco tie, or those types of things, or just a water or a tea. So these breaks can be taken at any point, and that it's a priority that both you and the storyteller are comfortable. And then, thank them for sharing their story. It's really important that after these stories are told, it's an acknowledgement of their resiliency in their life, and that you're appreciative of the moment that you're taking with them. So to acknowledge, the importance of sharing, but also hearing their stories, and that reminder that that this is contributing to good work, good intentions, and then you can refer if at all needed, a nice reminder of the outreach. Oh my God, I forget what it's called. The outreach numbers or contacts if they do find that they need some extra support. I'll be forwarding this along with some guiding questions if you so choose to use them. If you want to talk about other ones, and along with a bunch of other things, but that's the portion of the guiding prep.
Awesome, that was really well done. Thank you for that, Echo. So I just want to make sure that when we leave here today, that people have an idea, that they want to participate, but also that, if you are thinking of someone and know someone that you're going to interview, that you ask them, right? So how you ask them is important also. So being able to have all the information needed for you to be able to make that ask or that request of them. So if you're comfortable and, about passing tobacco to them, giving them some Saman, a little tobacco tie, and asking them first, telling them what the project is about and what you're asking from them. That's important. And I know I remember when I was younger and I was super uncomfortable with like, oh my gosh, I have to ask an elder something, or I have to ask an adult something. And, passing that Saman was so like, kind of want to go, here, yes, can you? I don't know, can you? But as you get older, it's really about not a transaction, but it's really about that agreement between you and that person, right? So when you have that Saman in your hand and you hold it in your left left hand, the one closest to your heart, and then you ask that of the person, the participant, will you participate in this project, to share your life story, which includes your time at a residential school or your time at an Indian day school, and let them know, that, that you're going to be setting up the space, you're going to be doing all of these things, and that you want to make sure that it's, you're honoring their words. How long it might be an hour, it might be half an hour, it might be 2 hours, depending on how much the person talks, and how much, engaged you are, and how much that they want to share. And then when you pass that tobacco to them, right, and when they accept it, that's an agreement. And so we need to be mindful of that connection and what that actually means. So, but I'm glad that a lot of people already on here know the importance and significance behind SEMA. So I think that's great. So that's one of the things I wanted to mention before we do leave today. And also, once you do have somebody and they have agreed, you've passed the SEMA to them, they've accepted, let ECHO know. So ECHO is going to be the one that's going to also reach out to them, go through the whole consent form with them, make sure that they are, really understanding the whole process. And then from there, then you can go ahead and schedule your interview. But then we would need to know also when that interview is, so that we can meet with both of you right after, to do the debriefing session, because we want to make sure both of you are supported through the whole process. So I think that's important. I actually had a community member reach out to me and ask me, and they were really concerned about retelling stories, traumatic stories that may have happened to people. And so I talked with him and I told him how we were going to roll out this project. And I know that's a really bad term, but how the project was going to unfold. And after I shared that information, he was quite more comfortable. It's like, okay, I didn't know that, right? So really, I think that sharing information is really important, even for people that aren't involved in the project, right? It's so everyone is able to know that this is being done in a way that it's safe and it's good for our mind, body, and spirit. So letting ECHO know, and then also your honorarium for today for participating in the training session. So the way that we've done it before was ECHO would send you a form, you would fill it out, and then when you send it back, then she would give you, then she would send me your email address, and then I give you the money. So I think that can still work. So ECHO is going to send everyone an email, and with that form, it's just a quick form that you need to fill out, send it back to her that you've received the money, and then I'll send you the e-transfer right away. Just to let you know, it's going to come from my husband's account. We have a joint account, and his name's first on it, so it always says Charles Lavalley has sent you money. And people are like, who's Charles Lavalley? And then I have to explain it. Okay, so we have a joint account. My name's second, doesn't show up. So once you get it, it's going to say Charles Lavalley.
I'll take money from anybody.
Me too. That's hilarious. Okay. So there's that piece. So I just want to make sure that when we leave here, I'm not leaving anything unanswered. But there is a question in the chat that I do want to bring up. It says, if I don't have anyone in my family who is able to tell a story, then do I look for someone else? You can. What we're trying to do right now is also recruit some people that want to share their stories. So if we don't want you to, if you know of somebody, that you're relatively close to, or then you can ask them. I think that's fine. But we are trying to recruit some people to tell stories also. So that's my answer, Emily. My answer is we're looking for people. But if you do know somebody that you can ask, then please go ahead. Great. And yeah, So Kali is just asking if we debrief with both individuals, and yes, we do. So I would debrief with either or, either the youth or the elder, and Echo and Carmen will debrief with the other person. Yeah, just to give them their space, especially if they know each other. Sometimes they don't want to say things or feel like they can totally, share what they need to, in case they hurt somebody, or I'm just thinking about this one particular thing that my mom had told me when I was about, I think it was around 13. I was about 13. She told me a story about when she was younger, about something that had happened, and I cried and I cried and I cried, and then she felt bad, and then she's like, oh, it wasn't that bad, it wasn't that bad, right? So I think that's something that we need to also acknowledge and think about also, is that sometimes those stories can still hurt us. But then to remember also that it's because we love them so much and care about them that we don't want to see them hurt. All right. So I think that's it. Does anyone have any other questions or comments before we finish up? All right.